What's up, family? Welcome back to the Stop Sinking Show, where we go from struggle to flow. In the last episode, if you're listening out of order, that's episode 351, called Lies and Liabilities. We talked about lies and the damaging result it leads to. And so we made the case for the importance of truth. Now, even if you haven't listened to that episode, which I recommend you go do, this conversation today can stand on its own without any background information. I will further create the case for the truth, but point out the very thing that is actually standing in the way of you arriving to the truth in the first place. Why are lies so attractive in the first place? And what about us is standing in the way that is keeping us from getting to the truth? Let me first tell you about the nature of truth. The truth doesn't work hard for it to be known. Unlike lies, which get their power from the speed of transfer, the speed of travel, the faster they spread, the stronger they are, especially when they go unchecked and unquestioned. The truth is like a needle in a haystack. Only those truly committed to finding it will come upon it. And like they say, the truth will set you free. Is it a surprise then that so few of us are free? Because many of us will not go seeking the truth, not voluntarily. We are just fine accepting what is common and socially accepted. The people who don't want you to find out the truth call these people conspiracy theorists. And I'm not trying to give any validity to any specific conspiracy, but if you've lived long enough, you've seen yesterday's conspiracies turn to today's truth. And there is a whole group of people who will label what they don't want you to find out as misinformation and conspiracy. Which, if you have the ability to take an honest, reflective look at yourself, you would at least revisit what was it that was so alluring about the socially acceptable version of truth or lie that kept me from at least considering what else could have been true. And that brings me to the point of today's episode, which is to point out why you keep missing the truth, why your commitment to the lie goes unchecked in the first place. And it's because the inroads, the doors to your mind, to your consideration of facts is restricted. It's blocked and full of traffic and possibly polluted by your cling to all that is familiar on this side of the door, keeping you from seeing what's on the other side. I found myself having to tell one of my friends this. And it made me realize what keeps people where they are longer than they need to be, longer than it would have actually taken to find the needle in the haystack even. I told him what I realized is now more of a universal issue than just him. I told him, talking to you sometimes is like trying to push a train on a rusted track. Now that may sound harsh, and it is, I guess, but it accurately describes the sensation of trying to help someone get into or maintain momentum only to meet a bunch of resistance from old, gunked up, unmaintained baggage. And rust is expected. It is the evidence of your age, just your exposure to oxygen. But where you let it sit and mount up is the evidence for your lack of attention. Rust accumulates with a lack of use, a lack of care and attention. And so the areas in your life that you are most rigid is because you have done the least work to try to maintain their upkeep. This is the punchline. If you are closed-minded in any area of your life, and you're probably too closed-minded to even consider your closed-mindedness, so I'm not sure even how to get you there without you first taking down the wall to even consider this. Because the only way to be open-minded about anything is to do some deep thinking. And it feels like a cause and effect, chicken or the egg kind of question. What came first, the open mind or the deep thinking? Did the open mind first allow for the door to even be open to the deep thinking? Or did some deep thinking lead to the open mind? I don't know what comes first, but I do know to point out the relationship that if you are open-minded in any area of your life, it's because you have done some deep thinking in that area. And probably that deep thinking only revealed how much you don't know and how much more there is to know, which opened you up even more. And if the opposite is true, where you find the rust accumulating, where you are more rigid to accept other possibilities, those are probably areas you are more closed off about because you haven't done any deep thinking. The greatest impediment, then, the biggest roadblock to a rich and expressive life is the preservation of ignorance, the inattentiveness that leads to the rust building. This is why I have a huge issue with the statement, ignorance is bliss. And though it may be tempting to look at this from a childlike view, in which life is all butterflies and rainbows and you have no care in the world because your contemplation isn't deep enough to even consider the complexities. And so you think, to maintain the bliss, I must maintain the ignorance. I must keep myself from seeing the complexities, or the bubble will burst and I will have to face reality. And I will tell you, at that point, it is no longer ignorance. It's willful blindness. Ignorance isn't bliss, nor has ignorance been preserved after a discussion that challenges its implications, that challenges it at all. The second you challenge it and consider other possibilities that lie outside of your ignorance, you are no longer ignorant. You are choosing to remain so. Ignorance literally translates to inexperience, the lack of knowing, being unfamiliar. The second you have been given something to consider to make you more familiar, lets you know more and experience more, but you remain to then continue to act out of ignorance, you have now acted out of the commitment to the ignorance. And it is no longer ignorance because it does not fit the definition of you not knowing. So really, it's just your own rigidity and arrogance at that point, the willingness to not see the truth. And if I even try to relate to the ignorance is bliss concept for even a brief moment, what I think people want is to try to preserve the innocence of childhood, the not knowing any better, the lack of responsibility that comes with that. However, innocence is temporary, something you grow out of. Ignorance is trying to preserve that same lack of responsibility into adulthood. It's a choice for the weak-willed and feeble-minded. They shudder at the idea that it is their responsibility to upkeep their tracks so that the flow is not disrupted, so they can ultimately travel more and more destinations in their life. Instead, we commit to our rigidity and keep ourselves making the same trips over and over again. If ignorance is bliss, it's a cyclical, blissful hell. But like the great historian said, we must view with profound respect the infinite capacity of the human mind to resist the inroads of useful knowledge. Your intelligence is more than IQ. Your rigidity, your emotional availability to new information and possibilities, that's what counts. Do you want to be right, or do you want to get it right? If you just want to be right, you will be committed to whatever it is that you think you know and defend it to the death. If you want to get it right, you will quiet down everything about you that you have given a loud voice to and let the parts of you that you have silenced for so long speak. What have you not seen that they have to show you? A person who has not done any deep thinking about a topic is going to be closed-minded. And if you want to be open, just allow yourself to go deeper than the surface level, well-accepted notions. And I get the temptation to stay away from this, because the deeper you go, the more unstable it feels. And it's much easier to grasp at whatever is the most easily available and live our life acting it out as a belief. It's much harder to actually try and find what to believe. to make our own beliefs. This is so scary and destabilizing that I can understand the human need to just grasp to any solid ground that we can. Whatever we were taught as kids, whatever the people around us believe, whatever is the most popular or makes us look the most virtuous. It is so much easier to just tie ourselves to what is readily available to us. But remember, lies spread. And what is most readily available has a small chance that it has been thought through well enough to be closer to the actual truth, to be open to the actual truth. It's much harder, much more scary to not know what to believe, to have long periods of your life where you literally have no idea where you stand on certain things. We're not taught that it's okay to be in research mode for a while on deep topics. We expect college kids to take stances on large-scale social issues that they have no idea the nuance of. They have no idea the nuance of their own life. And then add that to the human tendency to remain committed and consistent to what we have previously behaved as, and now you have a bunch of people who are closed off by their own previous closed-off considerations, their inability to consider. Self-reinforcing, cyclical hell. If you want the truth, you have to act in accordance to that. And sometimes that means just not committing to the lie. Sometimes not being blind is just having an open mind. Opening your eyes, allowing yourself to see what the lies disguise. I love you, family. Stay true always. I see you on the next show.